The writer of the footnotes has no doubt that it was a mistake, and that there's no offense. Take as many robes as you'd like from people who aren't ordained nuns. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 185, Tipiṭaka, part 114, in which I will recite Bhikkhunivibhaṅga, Pācittiya 24, 25, and probably 26. For those who are just joining us, who haven't seen this before, basically these are short stories-ish, where nuns do things that are inappropriate, but no one's ever done it before. And so it's the very moment and the story behind when each rule for nuns was established and then recited every half moon for 2,600 years for the Theravadins. So this is pre-sectarian early Buddhism, the very earliest of Buddhist literature, translated from Pali into English. If you would prefer to start at the beginning of the rules for nuns, that's the playlist for the rules for nuns, then please do feel free. I will go ahead and get to the reading. These are getting a bit shorter, so we'll see. Maybe we'll read 4 today. Let's find out. Expiation, Pācittiya 24. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, nuns having entrusted robes to the hands of (other) nuns, set out on a tour of the country with (only) the inner and upper robes. These robes, deposited for a long time, became soiled. Nuns dried them in the sun. Nuns spoke thus to these nuns, quote, "Ladies, whose are those robes that are soiled?" End quote. Then these nuns told this matter to the nuns. Those who were modest nuns, spread it about, saying, quote, "How can nuns, having entrusted robes to the hands of (other) nuns, set out on a tour of the country with (only) the inner and upper robes?" End quote. Quote, "Is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns (?)" Again, for those who are just joining us, () means that the Pali Text Society opted to take out a word, a phrase, a sentence, a paragraph, or a page and a half of text because it was mentioned at some point before in the previous 2.5 books. It's absolutely obnoxious, and in the early recordings, I think I probably lost a lot of people with how angry I was getting at the Pali Text Society for being so disrespectful to this earliest Buddhist literature, of which this is the only English translation. So I won't go on about it too much, just to let you know that if it's annoying to you, I understand. All right, so in the middle of the quote from Lord Buddha, "Is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns with (only) again, for those who are just joining us, parentheses means that word wasn't in the original Pali, but it's added to help clarify the context, and it usually does. Sometimes it's totally unnecessary, and it would be better without the word in parentheses. Just so you know why I'm saying 3 dots and saying parentheses and then parentheses. All right. Starting again at the beginning of the quote from Lord Buddha. Is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns 3 dots with parentheses only and parentheses the inner and upper robes? End quote. Quote, it is true, Lord, end quote, the enlightened one. The Lord rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can nuns 3 dots with parentheses only and parentheses the inner and upper robes? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses yet and parentheses pleased, 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should miss going about in an outer cloak for 5 days, there is an offense of expiation, end quote. Whatever means 3 dots. But at one time, the unenlightened one, me, read something in, no, it might have been in this same book, where it says what whatever means. Every 3 or 4 episodes, I like to flash back to that time that whatever, the definition of whatever was given. So we'll do that now. Whatever means, she who is an elder or a junior or one of middle standing, this one on account of relations, on account of birth, on account of name, on account of clan, on account of virtue, on account of the way of living, on account of the field of activity, is called whatever. Thank you, me, several months ago, 6 months ago maybe. Nun means she is a nun because she is a beggar for alms. She is a nun because she submits to walking for alms. She is a nun because she is one who wears the patchwork robes. She is a nun by the designation, parentheses, of others, end parentheses. A nun because of her acknowledgement. A nun, parentheses, to whom it was, parentheses, said, quote within quotes, come, nun, end quote within quotes. A nun is one ordained by the 3 goings to a refuge. A nun is auspicious. A nun is the essential. A nun is a learner. A nun is an adept. A nun is ordained by both complete orders by means of a, parentheses, formal, end parentheses, act, at which the motion is put and followed by 3 proclamations, irreversible and fit to stand. In this way is this nun one who is ordained by both complete orders by means of a, parentheses, formal, end parentheses, act, at which the motion was put and followed by 3 proclamations, irreversible, fit to stand, and this is how nun is to be understood in this case. Always good to be reminded the definition of nun. All right, continuing. Should miss going about in an outer cloak for 5 days means if on the 5th day she neither dresses in, nor puts on, nor dries in the sun the 5 robes, parentheses, but, end parentheses, lets the 5th day pass, there is an offense of expiation. I'm curious about the 5 robes. What is that referring to? Maybe they'll explain one day. If she thinks that 5 days are past, when they are past, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt as to whether 5 days are past, there is an offense of expiation. If she thinks that 5 days are not past when they are past, there is an offense of expiation. If she thinks that 5 days are past when they are not past, there is an offense of wrongdoing. So it's always a wrongdoing if you think you did something wrong, but you didn't actually do something wrong. It's still a wrongdoing because in your mind you were doing something wrong, right? If she is in doubt as to whether 5 days are not past, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that 5 days are not past when they are not past, can you guess? There is no offense. There is no offense if on the 5th day she dresses in or puts on or dries the 5 robes in the sun. If she is ill, if there are accidents, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Oh, some material left out here. These clauses should state that the offense also depends on her not dressing in, putting on, or drying the 5 robes. Why was it left out? If she thinks that 5 days are passed when they are past, and she has not dressed in, put on, or dried the 5 robes, there is an offense of expiation. Okay, I think we understood from the context. Okay, so that was relatively painless. Let's see how this one is. Perhaps, maybe it's entertaining. I don't know. We'll see. Expiation, Pācittiya 25. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, a certain nun, having walked for alms, having spread out a damp robe, entered a dwelling place. A certain nun, having put on that robe, entered a village for alms food. She, having come out, asked the nuns, quote, "Ladies, have you not seen my robe?" End quote. The nuns told this matter to the nun. Then that nun, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, okay, what happened here? I'm going to keep reading, and maybe it'll become clear. Quote, "How can this nun, without asking parentheses for permission, end parentheses, put on my robe?" End quote. Then this nun told this matter to the nuns. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, "How can this nun put on a nun's robe without asking parentheses for permission, end parentheses?" End quote. 3 dots. All right. So she spread out her robe, and then a different nun put it on, I guess. Okay. Quote, "Is it true, as is said, monks, that a nun," 3 dots, "without asking parentheses for permission," end parentheses, end quote. Quote, "It is true, Lord," end quote. The Enlightened One, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, "How, monks, can a nun," 3 dots, "without asking parentheses for permission," end parentheses. "It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not," parentheses, "yet," end parentheses, "pleased." 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should wear a robe that should be handed back, there is an offense of expiation. All right. A robe that should be handed back is another way of saying to wear another nun's robe without asking for permission. Okay. Well, maybe it'll explain in the definitions of things. Whatever means 3 dots, none means 3 dots. A robe that should be handed back means, here it is, if she dresses in or puts on any one robe of the 5 parentheses kinds of, end parentheses, robes of one who is ordained, either if it was not given to her or without asking parentheses permission, end parentheses, for it, there is an offense of expiation. Okay. If she thinks that she is ordained when she is ordained, parentheses, and, end parentheses, wears a robe that should be handed back, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt as to whether she is ordained, 3 dots. If she thinks that she is not ordained when she is ordained, 3 dots, offense of expiation. If she wears a robe of one who is not ordained, and that should be handed back, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that she is ordained when she is not ordained, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she is in doubt as to whether she is not ordained, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that she is not ordained when she is not ordained, there is an offense of wrongdoing. There's a footnote. Should doubtless read, there is no offense. Doubtless. Doubtless. this. Was the mistake in the Pali, in the ancient Pali scriptures, was that where the mistake was? Or was it in the translation? Doubtless, according to whom, for what reason? These are some questions that come to mind. All right. So if a nun takes a robe without permission from someone who's not ordained, according to the text, that's a wrongdoing. Sounds like a wrongdoing. Don't take things without permission. But the writer of the footnotes has no doubt that it was a mistake, and that there's no offense. Take as many robes as you'd like from people who aren't ordained nuns. Okay, there is no offense if she gives it to, or if asking parentheses for permission, if asking parentheses permission in parentheses for it, she dresses in it or puts it on, if she is one whose robe is stolen, if she is one whose robe is destroyed, if there are accidents, if she is mad, I am certainly mad, if she is the first wrongdoer, and I don't mean angry. Expiation, Pācittiya 26. At one time, the enlightened one, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, the family who supported the nun Tulananda spoke thus to the nun Tulananda, quote, "Lady, we will give robes for the order of nuns," end quote. The nun Tulananda saying, quote, "You are very busy. There is much to be done," end quote, put an obstacle in the way. Then that family's house was burnt down. They, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, "How could the lady Tulananda put an obstacle in the way of our gift of faith? We are down and out all around." Okay, we are down and out all around, an expression which would have existed in Britain in the 1930s when this was translated. We are down, not so much, but down and out for sure. Okay, sorry. Both as to property and as to merit, they are down and out, right? End quote. Nuns heard these people, who, three dots, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, "How can the lady Tulananda put an obstacle in the way of a group's receiving robes?" End quote, three dots, quote, "Is it true, as is said, monks, that the nun Tulananda put an obstacle in the way of a group's receiving robes?" End quote. Quote, "It is true, Lord." End quote. The enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, "How, monks, can the nun Tulananda put an obstacle in the way of a group's receiving robes? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses yet, and parentheses pleased. Three dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should put an obstacle in the way of a group's receiving robes, there is an offense of expiation. End quote. So just to look back here, nun Tulananda said, "You are very busy. There's much to be done. Put an obstacle in the way." Put an obstacle in the way. So they said, "We're going to give you some robes." And she's like, "You're very busy." Was the act of saying, "You're very busy," the thing which put the obstacle in the way? Or did she then, after having said that, go outside, find a big hunk of wood or something, and stick it in front of their door, thus putting an obstacle in the way? I think that it's intended to imply that her saying, "Oh, you're very busy, there's much to be done," was putting an obstacle in the way. Maybe in 6th century BC Bihar that would have made sense. I will take that on faith. All right. Whatever means 3 dots, none means 3 dots. A group means it is called an order of nuns. Robe means any one of the 6 parentheses kinds of, weren't there 5 kinds of in the previous? Robes, parentheses including and parentheses the least one fit for assignment. Should put an obstacle in the way means if saying, quote, how can this robe be given? And, quote, she puts an obstacle in the way, there is an offense of expiation. If she puts an obstacle in the way of another requisite, there's an offense of wrongdoing, right? Because robes are a little more important than other things. If she puts an obstacle in the way of a robe or of another requisite for several nuns, or for one nun, or for a woman who is not ordained, there is an offense of wrongdoing. Okay, so it's an offense of expiation if she does it for a group of nuns, i.e. an order of nuns, but not if she just puts an obstacle in the way of like 10 nuns, but not the whole group. Okay. All right. Now we have that information, and we're a little bit more full of information. You're welcome. You hear the rain? All right. There is no offense if she hinders, having pointed out an advantage. If she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Okay. And I'll go ahead and read one more. So we'll make this an episode of 4 different Pācittiya rules. Expiation, Pācittiya 27. At one time, the enlightened one, the Lord, the one you're thinking of, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, robe material had accrued to an order of nuns not at the right time. Then that order of nuns collected together, wishing to distribute that robe material. Now at that time, the nuns who were the pupils of the nun Tulananda had gone out. The nun Tulananda spoke thus to those nuns, quote, ladies, nuns are gone out. The robe material should not be distributed yet, and, quote, parentheses, and parentheses, she held back the division of the robe material. Nuns saying, quote, the robe material should not be distributed yet, and, quote, parted company. When the nuns who were pupils returned, the nun Tulananda had that robe material distributed. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can the lady Tulananda hold back a legally valid division of robe material? And, quote, 3 dots, quote, is it true, as is said, that the nun Tulananda held back a legally valid division of robe material, end quote? Quote, it is true, Lord, end quote. The enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can the nun Tulananda hold back a legally valid division of robe material? Is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses yet, end parentheses pleased. 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should hold back a legally valid division of robe material, there is an offense of expiation. Whatever means 3 dots, none means 3 dots. Legally valid division of robe material means a complete order of nuns, having collected together, distributes it. Okay. Should hold back means if saying, quote, how could one distribute this robe material, end quote, she holds it back, there is an offense of expiation. If she thinks that it is legally valid when it is legally valid, parentheses and parentheses, holds the parentheses, holds parentheses the division and parentheses back, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt as to whether it is legally valid, 3 dots, offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that it is not legally valid when it is legally valid, 3 dots, no offense. Not even a wrongdoing? Okay. If she thinks that it is legally valid when it is not legally valid, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she is in doubt as to whether it is not legally valid, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that it is not legally valid when it is not legally valid, there is no offense. There is no offense if she holds it back, having pointed out an advantage. If she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Just a reminder, I started reading, by the way, I pointed to the order to the rules for nuns earlier, but if you want to start at the beginning of the Tipiṭaka, that's there. And that was last year in, I don't know when it was. Was it August? Maybe a little longer, but let's assume that it's been 1 year. We are almost finished with the 3rd book. And there are 6 books. 1, 2, 3, the empty space, that's this one. 4, 5, 6 of these rules, which means that in a little over a year, I'll be finished reading the rules. And by then, maybe I will have achieved a deeper sense of inner peace with the 3 dots and the Pali Text Society. Plus, it's a different translator, so maybe they're, well, I won't. I'm sure Ms. Horner is a lovely person. So feel free to check back in a year and a half or so and see if I'm actually reading the teachings of Lord Buddha, or if I'm still reading these rules. Why did you watch this whole thing? All right. Or listen to it for the people on the audio-only podcast. I mean, I had to. I have to edit it and, cut out all my burping and whatnot. But you didn't have to, but you did anyway. Comment below. I'm curious. Okay, I am going to enjoy the rain, and I hope that you have a lovely day, whoever you are, wherever you are. And I'll go ahead and do the closing. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time.